Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Red Pill Nation. No, what am I saying? Red Pill Nation. Red Pill Nation's a live stream on false false accusations. I'm just being a little bit blah here. I keep screwing up on the connection. Here we go. Okay, for those of you who are listening on Rumble, I am actually sending you the actual link. I'm not inviting anybody to join. This is a strictly solo episode. This is a strictly solo effort on my part. But yeah, if you feel like commenting or listening, go right ahead. The topic tonight is, of course, false accusations. Yeah, so I'm going to start out right from the very beginning here, and I'm going to just go into go run a scenario past you. And it's one that a lot of people have actually dealt with. A lot of men have actually dealt with, and it's a fairly simple event. It's a scenario that actually happened to me at one point. It's like you're going to work, and you have female, at least a female friend anyway, like somebody who's willing to actually listen to you talk to you, and you sit there and you talk to her for a few minutes at the start of every single day, and you don't really think anything about it. You know, she listens to you talk, whatever, and you go into work, you have a conversation with her, and then when it's over said and done, you just go back in and go to work. Now, on this particular day, though, it's a little bit different. On this particular day, what ends up happening is that you end up getting a call from HR, and HR wants to talk to you about somebody that you've been harassing at work. And this woman that you've been allegedly harassing at work is the same woman that you've been having this conversation with every day for the last couple of weeks, and you haven't really thought anything about it because you're not really exactly all that interested in her. You just thought she was just a nice person that you were having a conversation with. Turns out that's not what was going on. You're stunned. You're shocked. You're absolutely amazed. You're miffed. And you really don't know what to say because, this just came out of the blue. And, maybe you've had this sort of thing happen to you before. Maybe you haven't. But for whatever reason, this woman gave no indication, at least that you can see initially anyway, that there was a problem. As you're either being fired, being escorted out, or decide to take the rest of the day off or sitting in the lunchroom on break, you're absolutely flabbergasted and amazed because in retrospect, like what was going on was as obvious as the nose on the end of your face, but you just missed it. And maybe this has happened to you before. Maybe this hasn't. There are guys out there this seems to just happen to all the time. So there are men out there that can make workplace romance work, or interactions with women work in the workplace. But there's others that just simply, it's like they even look at a woman the wrong way, and it just goes badly for them. And one of the things as you're sitting there like wondering about this is like, why does this keep happening? Why does this keep happening to me? And you're flummoxed, you're amazed, and it's, and of course it's a big deal because naturally, of course, you had to do the walk to the office. The woman who made this accusation is, of course, told everybody around her, except, of course, for you. So you were the last one to find out about this. And that's probably where we should start on this, right? Because and really a good indication that this might just be a false accusation is that in no like this has happened with women that I have been romantically interested with, and women that I haven't been romantically interested with, and just having conversations with them at work. They just misinterpret something that I'm saying or whatever, and or that somebody else has been saying to them, and the next thing you know, your boss is talking to you about something that you didn't even know was a problem. And you're like, wow, holy moly. Now, here's another one. This one didn't happen to me. It did, however, happen to an individual who was actually on the air, on the radio, and described this. He works at a bar, which means this definitely wasn't me because I've never, well, I won't say I've never worked at a bar, but I mean, I don't usually work at bars. There is this girl there who takes an interest in him. They click. They they really click. He takes her home. They have sex. She leaves though at the end of in the morning. She leaves in a big ass hurry. And you don't really know why she left in such a big ass hurry, but she left in a huge ass hurry. You don't even think anything of it. You get your stuff on. You suddenly dawns you that maybe you didn't even get this woman's phone number. And, you go through the rest of the day and you go to work. And the next thing you know, when you go into work, police show up. And you have to go through the process because this girl was either A, lied about her age, B, had a boyfriend, C, was married. And rather than saying the truth, she says to this person, I got raped. And of course, now, because the guy is angry and pissed off, she has to go and file a report against you or some other guy in order to fall through, even though the sex was consensual. That's also happened. Top situation number 3. You have a somewhat rocky relationship with a live-in girlfriend. You don't really understand what's going on with her, but one day, out of the blue, you two get into an argument or whatever, and she trips and falls and hits her head. You don't lay a finger on her, but she trips and falls and hits her head on the cupboard or whatever, and there's a big, large, nasty bruise there. And it's one of those bruises that you can't hide. And next day, she comes to meet with some of her girlfriends or her brother or her father or whatever. Somebody asks questions, and rather than admit the truth, she just says that you or somebody beat her up. These all fall under the cat. And again, right? Same thing, right? These all fall under the category of false accusations. And what ends up happening is, once again, right, the police must do due diligence. They have to take you in. They have to question you. They have to treat you like you're a potential criminal, like you're a potential abuser. Process as punishment, as you heard me say earlier. It's embarrassing. It's humiliating. Everybody knows it's kind of hard. And again, it's one of those situations that's kind of hard to explain because she's got a big, huge, nasty bruise on her forehead or somewhere on her face from something that she did to herself. And of course, The situation behind it is, of course, that you were in a relationship that's not particularly stable or not particularly good at the time. So, yeah, everybody's looking at you like you're the one who's guilty. Now, what do you do in that kind of a situation? Because there is shock is the first emotion that generally comes up. I'm going to use the Kubler-Ross model here. Shock. I mean, you didn't do anything, and that's the first thing you really need to understand here is that you didn't do anything, but you're in shock, and you're of course you're denying it because you didn't do. Hold on a second. You didn't do anything wrong, and you know it's of course I didn't do anything wrong, but it's like, everything is just happening so fast that it's kind of hard to keep it straight and cool and calm. Then, of course, after you've done with the police, or maybe even you're sitting in a jail cell at this point, or you're having to march out of the HR's office and everybody in the office is looking back at you like you just committed some grand crime, even though you didn't do anything. Or maybe even worse, maybe you're even being escorted off the site because you've been fired. I mean, how humiliating, how embarrassing. Like, there's just you didn't do anything wrong, right? And it's like and you're just reeling at that point. And it is very, very difficult when something like this happens at first to really like keep yourself coherent and keep yourself calm. And that is probably and that yeah, that is I think one of the first things you need to be able to do is right, as soon as the shock in the anger, I mean, you're going to be, I mean, yeah, you are going to be angry about this. If you're not angry about this, there's probably something wrong with you, and maybe you did do something. But, like one of the first things you need to do when something like this occurs is to go and just chill out in a quiet place for a few hours, a day, 2 days, whatever. Um, Immediately upon doing this, too, when you finally start to kind of grasp what's going on, and you suddenly realize that you're seeing the signs there that you just didn't see before, the mixed messages, the way that she would kind of like shy away from you or duck behind the counter or whatever, things that you missed before that you weren't looking for because either A, you weren't interested, or B, it didn't seem like it was all that significant. You got to look at those events. Now, is this something that you could have easily spotted, or was this something that, just came literally out of the blue, like scenario number two? But even again, in scenario number two, right, there's things that you could have done differently and probably should have done differently. Scenario number three. Um, with scenario number three, with with the false accusation of domestic abuse, you know, that's a tough one, right? Because there's this little thing called the Duluth model, and when the Duluth model kicks in, the Duluth model basically runs on the premise that all men, that all levels of domestic abuse stem from the male. Like the woman is considered innocent and not a perpetuator of domestic abuse, which of course is patently wrong. But I got some bad news for you. If you're just some outside listener listening to this, I mean, it is the model that most law enforcement agencies in North America and the West work with. I can't remember the whole history, but it was designed by a feminist, and it refuses on any level to consider the fact that the female is innocent, so it is responsible for anything. So yeah, if it's the third case, you might be sitting in a jail cell at that point. And no matter which one of these three you go through, the concept of process as punishment kicks in. And yeah, that's a hard one to look at. That's a hard one to accept, right? And if you're somebody like, say, a guy in the manosphere, like, this, and this is part two of this is the second part of the situation after you calm down. Part two is that you immediately lawyer up and you start asking other men in the manosphere about this issue. You start asking questions. You start asking a lot of questions, and you start breaking this stuff down into a working order. Because if you don't break it down and you don't figure out where the holes are, it's going to be a different story if it goes to the level of a criminal charge. And with the case of the latter two, even in the first one, the case of the latter two, I mean, that is a very real possibility. Most police forces are, well, when it comes to domestic abuse, definitely. But I mean, a lot of police forces are able to really ferret out false accusations fairly quickly. That's not particularly reassuring, though, if that has happened to you. It isn't. But I mean, yeah, you need to lawyer up as quick. If it's the latter two, you need to lawyer up. If it's the third one, if it's just something that's going on in the office, accusations of sexual harassment in the office, you have to, once you calm down, you have to start making a decision about this job. Like, do you stand and fight, or do you just walk away and let it sit? This is a very tough decision to make, because if this is a small place that you work at, for instance, where there's only 30 or 40 employees, like, literally everybody's going to know. And if you have the misfortune of running into an HR manager with an axe to grind on this particular issue, man, working there can be an extremely difficult situation. If it's a Fortune 500 company, again, the situation is going to the situation is going to get into, it's still going to be awkward, and it's still going to be a little bit painful to deal with, right? Again, most of the major corporations out there have got DEI models. Most Fortune 500 companies, most HR departments are run by women, and most HR departments are fueled by feminist rhetoric. Welcome aboard, Rearson. Normally I would do the Neroke 5 live stream by myself, but Rearson wants to jump in here. So, Rearson, we're about 20 minutes into the show, but feel free to introduce yourself.
No, I think you can hear me.
Oh, I can hear you just fine, yeah.
Perfect. All right. Yeah, I don't know why. I just felt like to jump in tonight. Maybe it's a bit of compensation for yesterday. Can I say
Yeah, the microphone's actually on this time too.
it? All right. Yeah. The Good lord. Yeah, I think we have to go back to what 97, 96, somewhere around there. I think that we've known each other. So
95. But
95.
anyway, yeah.
Yeah. Well, good God, that's oh wow, that's a long time ago. Anyway, yeah, Rocky and I have known each other for that long, so I'd say that this is a friendship that's not going anywhere, except it's only going to get better. So, and with that,
Because it beats the hell out of it getting worse.
well, at least we're not acting like a bunch of catty women that were nice to each other's faces, but the minute one turns their back, the knives and claws come out. Anyway, so
Anyway, so yeah, this is a Neroke 5 live stream, and we're talking specifically about false accusations. I mean, as we go through, I am going to discuss three particular false accusation situations. That would be Jean Gomeshi, Andrew Tate, and the current situation between Justin Baldoni. By the way, you need to mute your microphone right now. The current situation with Justin Baldoni. And but I mean, I'm going to go through right now. We're going to discuss the legal options and also maybe get into a bit more of a personal. Like, I'm also going to reiterate. I don't know if this has happened a lot to Rearson, but I can tell you what it has happened to me more than a few times in the past. And this is the part that I'm gonna get into. Like, currently what we're discussing right now is the concept of like defensive tactics. Uh, so the current scenario is this: you've just dealt with a false accusation. So you're either sitting in a jail cell, you're still sitting at your desk at work, or you're sitting at home and you're just absolutely stunned and shocked, right? Because most of the time, and this is something that a lot of people find out about false accusations right off the top. Um, a lot of them, do come out of the blue if they're false accusations like this because you weren't actually doing anything wrong, right? Unfortunately, these things, because this woman chose to not immediately involve you, there's a lot of this that's currently out of your control. Uh, so it is necessary to immediately let people in your life know what is going on. Now, this is a double edged sword because, in one particular scenario, and this is something that I will get into about the actions of women around false accusations. Um, there's a particular personality type that attracts false accusations probably more than others. I was a little bit, this is something I discovered one time I was listening to Tara Palmalche. When Tara Palmalche discussed this particular topic and described the personality of the guy that tends to fall victim to false accusations, I face palmed so hard that my head, like, I actually like almost left an indentation on my forehead because I mean the type of guy that she was talking about was me. Polite, considerate, not too pushy, not directly necessarily going in and making it sexual, you know, being polite, being respectable, being kind, you know, um, being amicable, not being the asshole. Now, as we all know, women just love assholes, right? Yeah, they just love to fucking spread them for the biggest asshole in the room. In fact, I'm going to refer to you to a couple of incidences in The Bachelorette. I want to point out to you that in those TV series, it's usually the namby kind of like wimpy romantic guy is usually either the first or second guy that gets eliminated. The asshole doesn't win either, but the asshole usually almost hangs in there to the end. Why? Because female. That's why. And I don't particularly care if you like me saying that, but that is the situation. And you know, but yeah, um the men that I've spoken to about this and what has happened to me is that I looked at the scenario and I couldn't figure out what it was, especially with a certain personality type. I mean, you're just stuck there. You're like scratching your head, like, why does this keep happening to me? Because at least from what I knew and from what other men knew that I've spoken to, they were doing what was supposedly the right thing. They were. And, you know, this keeps happening to them. And it's like, it just leaves you scratching your head and wondering if especially if you've been reflecting on this, it's like, what am I doing or not doing that's causing it? And yes, by the way, I have to, this is going to be some really hard, unpleasant news for the guys that are like this, because I mean, to these guys that are listening to this, you're like listening to this and it's like you don't want to be the asshole. You don't want to be that kind of a person. You don't really like being that type of a person. You don't like treating people like that, right? You know, and for whatever reason, there is a faction of women out there, not all of them, obviously, but there are enough of them out there that you have to, unfortunately, they are intentionally picking on guys like you and guys like me, because the only reason I can think of as to why they're doing it is because you're deemed nice and you're deemed polite and you're deemed as a guy who's not going to be threatening, and therefore this gives her the ability to do whatever she likes to you without any consequences. So, again, you need to let again, immediately upon this happening, you need to let your friends know. What's also unfortunately going to happen if you're one of these individuals that end up being victim of these all the time is that some of your friends are going to start asking, especially if this has happened a few times, there's going to be some friends of yours that are going to start asking some really tough questions. And, there's a very good chance that up until now that you haven't had the answers, right? Like you've been what you thought was the nice guy. And by the way, this also happens when it comes to situations of false domestic abuse and false rape, right? The only feasible explanation that I can come up with is that some women view this as weakness, and they feel that it's like you won't cause too much difficulty for them if they go ahead and do this. But I mean, the amount of damage that can be done about this is definitely very real. Rearson, for instance, here remembers when I remembers this one certain woman that I dealt with in Banff who made accusations against me of basically me stalking her. And even after I resolved it, she was still telling, I mean, eventually, right, word got out that I didn't do anything, but I mean, she was still telling people that I used to do it and still lying about the situation even 3-4 years after the fact. And like the amount, like if it's a difference between living in a city and living in a small town. Like in a big city, like if a woman tries this, right? And you see what's going on, you have the luxury, for lack of a better word, of just simply not going into that place or not having to like not go near that place. If you're living in a small town, though, like say Banff, that is an option you don't necessarily have. And yeah, the whole time that I was living in Banff for the remaining part of the 90s, this thing followed me around like a scarlet letter. And I mean, it obviously ended when I left, but I mean, it got dangerous. It got threatening. And it wasn't the only time that it happened in Banff. Now, Rearson has been quietly sitting on the back burner here. I'm going to allow him to have his say on this. Again, usually I do the Neroke 5 live stream by myself, but Rearson wanted to jump in. So, Rearson, if you want to have a say on this, go ahead.
Yeah, if you want to kick me out, that's fine too. I can do that as well.
Hello?
I'm just putting together what I want to say here. I don't recall being falsely accused of anything. I honestly don't. I've been told of an accusation that was thrown at me from HR back in Lake Louise, way back in the day. And I was surprised by it because I don't remember doing it. And I went to confront the woman about it. This was in front of about 4 or 5 other people, and she laid into me, and I went, okay, yeah, no, I do remember doing that. And I did apologize. In terms of, I can say that I do have a stalker mentality potential to me, and I'm more afraid of that than I am afraid of being accused of being a stalker or to go into that. I can't even call it a relation with a woman, but I mean, I refuse to let something like that happen to me at this point. I mean, it's too easy, far too easy for that to be thrown at a guy. And before he knows what the hell's going on, it's a case of, cask of fuck. I am going to go back, and I think that this is my defensive, I can't believe this could happen to me. Or more of it being, this can go to HR pretty damn fast, and I don't want that. And that was a woman who had told me that she wanted to, she was looking for a white guy to cheat with on her Filipino boyfriend. And I was like, well, okay then. And she was a nice, hot, tight little piece of ass. I will say that right now. But again, honestly, what went through my head was, this can go back to HR. I'm not touching this one. Now, she did end up marrying one of the guys from work, who's a ginger. And they got 3 kids together last I saw. And there seemed to be signals that she was sending out all the time, and I was looking at them. He's like going, yeah, I'd like to, yeah, I'd want to, but yeah, I'm not going to. So anyone listening to this now or whenever, you're free to label me as a beta or a delta or whatever you want to call it, but I'm not putting myself in any potential position that I'm going to be seen as someone that's going to be a problem for HR. And since we know that HR is typically filled with nothing but women, I don't think Shaw at the time would give
feminist women to boot, usually.
And I don't think that I would have been given the fair shake, or I don't think I would be given, I don't think I'd be given a fair anything from HR, no matter where it is. Because, I mean, let's face it, HR is filled with women to protect women because women have this innate sense of need for drama. No fucks given.
Well, I mean, one of the incidents that occurred with me, and yeah, by the way, in my particular case, this particular type of situation occurred more than once. Oh, and
Yeah.
anybody who is suggesting that I'm some sort of creeper pervert, because I mean, you obviously missed that first part. Um, women, there are women out there that will pick these guys, and I suspect that they pick these guys because they know that there's not gonna they know that they're not gonna cause too much of a headache, and they can just milk the poor guy for all the drama that it's worth.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, in one particular situation, this was about 15 years ago. HR got involved in HR. Like literally, they violated they violated anonymity, and HR like literally announced to everybody, including every single manager in the place, what was going on with me, and attempt to dig something up on me to get me fired. Now,
Wow.
what ended up happening in this particular case is that I had to go to my manager, and I had to go like, yeah, you know what? I didn't do anything. And the the particular situation that occurred with this particular one, this gives you an idea of how bad some of these women are. She was going like even something as innocuous as showing up for work at the same, because she had to take the bus and I had to take the bus. Showing up for work at the same time. Like I would show up for work. This I remember this specifically happened one time, and she saw that I got off the bus behind her, and she immediately started running, and she like ran into the store, ran to the back, and as I'm coming in and I'm signing in, the HR manager is getting buzzed. And of course, right, she would have immediately figured out that I was starting at the same time as she was, and there's nothing that she could do about it. But I mean, she was still trying. Um, Fortunately, in this particular case, the my manager spoke to the woman in HR and more or less told her to back off. I wasn't doing anything, and what eventually happened is probably about a month or so later, she ended up quitting. But again, right, someone the issue with false accusations that is some if she gets somebody who's sympathetic, someone with an actual axe to grind, like it can get really ugly fast. So what do you do? Because I mean, you're going to go through again. I used Kubler, talked about Kubler Ross earlier. um what do you do after you have calmed down a little bit? Let your friends know what's going on, and decide immediately upon finding out whether you need to lawyer up or not. Now, if it's a false rape accusation or a false domestic violence accusation, yeah, you absolutely need to lawyer up immediately, especially if it's a situation where, well, obviously, if it's a domestic violence situation, you're probably not even living in the place anyway. Two, if it's a domestic violence situation, and you have for instance, a restraining order, if it's a small town, make sure she doesn't, especially if you have work tools or whatever in there. That's the reason why you need to lawyer up. You need to get that stuff out of, because a lot of this is necessarily almost about control, right? You need to be able to get your work stuff out of there. Now, if there's kids involved too, well, that's a whole different ball game. The thing you got to realize too about it when it's a false accusation of domestic violence is that you're running into something called I talked about it earlier. It's called the Duluth model. Most domestic abuse counselors, most police, most law enforcement of any type use the Duluth model, and the Duluth model is basically you're the one who's guilty because you're the man. Period. In fact, in a lot of cases, and I've read stories about this, the cops know that the guy is not involved, but they will remove the guy from the environment, even if it's not the guy who's causing it, just because they need to calm the situation down. And it's more or less just standard protocol. uh I hate to say this, because child protective services in most countries in the West are corrupt as fuck. In fact, tomorrow when we're doing the Red Pill Nation hangout, I will be discussing Ethan Klein and the fact that Hasanabe has sicked his. Ethan Klein and Hasanabe used to be really good buddies, and now they're not. Is sicking have been attempting to sick child protective services on Ethan Klein because he's got a kid who got an infection, a parasitic infection from one of Ethan's pets, and they're using that as an excuse to harass Ethan Klein. Child protective services, again, right, we're talking about a law enforcement faction here. They will probably view the guy as a potential, as probably being the abuser. But if there are children involved, that might be a good idea, right? I know of, in fact, DDJ, his ex-wife, like when she pairs up with him, the new guy that his ex-wife got together with sexually abused the kids that DDJ had with that first woman, and the woman just sat back and allowed it to happen. That has never gone through it. It's painful as hell, but yeah. In the case of a domestic abuse situation or a rape case, you have to go to condition red immediately. 3, the next phase on this is find out which ones of your friends you can rely upon. Because again, this is going back to a story I read. Again, a guy who was being continued. It didn't happen to me. I was amazed, probably because I lived in different places in the world when this happened to me. But I mean, guy who lived in this town, and this guy just kept becoming victims of false accusations of stalking or harassment or whatever. And he had this supposedly best friend, and this best friend at one point, they're meeting up with his relatives, and he overhears this supposedly best friend of his talking to his female relatives and telling the female relatives that they need to be careful around him. Now, when he was confronted on that type of behavior, it's like, hey, his response is, well, and if you're innocent, then why does this keep happening? Right? So you really, like, this is the really tough part for a lot of guys to swallow, right? Most people will not ask questions. A lot of people will just simply assume that the woman is in the right. Or in the case of one particular time with a friend of mine, this didn't involve me. This involved a domestic abuse case with a coworker and his wife. And this particular guy had a temper. His temper could get really explosive. Something happened. His wife called the cops. He got taken away to jail for a day or two. The boss tried to the boss of the job, even though there were no criminal charges pending, the boss tried to fire him. And fortunately, and it was like, and I'm talking about this with another friend of mine later on, and it's like, yeah, and I was like, and this is somebody who I have discussed issues of false accusations before in the past, and he's like going, yeah, I have a sister, and yes, she had an ex-boyfriend that was doing this stuff to her. And I'm like, yeah, like, you are aware of the fact that there's such a thing, like, there are false accusations. In fact, I've discussed them with you, right? So even people who are in the know might not necessarily be willing to listen to you, right? Like, you have to figure out who you can trust and who you can't trust. You have to figure out whether you need to lawyer up or not lawyer up. if you have to lawyer up to the best of your ability, try to recall as many details as humanly possible of the situation. Reason why you need to recall as many things about the situation is because, like, in one particular case story that I read, it turns out that they went to a transit station and made out at the transit station, and that transit station camera got this guy off of criminal charges, and he was able to turn it around and file criminal charges against her. Yeah, you need to start doing that. And even if you're just accused of stalking, right, you need to do a review of the event in question and look at the event, and was there actual stalking? What were your intentions? And you need to get past one of the biggest fallacies out there, which is that women are wonderful. No, women are not wonderful. Okay, yes, there are some very nice women out there, but there are also women that go around cheating on and dragging men into potentially life-threatening situations just for the sake of melodrama. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rearson for a couple minutes.
Well, I mean, this kind of goes with what I was saying before about HR being a department made for women, to be monitored by women, to be protected by women. I remember there was one guy that actually did manage to get into HR from, well, two of them. One was temporary. He ended up being my former manager at Memory Express, who actually put in a good word for me to be hired on full time when I was a temp worker. So I was quite thankful for that. It was one of the best days of my life. Anyway, but the other one that got in there, he was a bigger guy, and I don't mean bigger as in rotund. I mean, he was kind of bigger, stockier, and I would have to think about him now as being probably, I don't want to use the word, but I think I'll have to. I think he was just basically a simp. I don't know if he's always wanted to be part of HR or whatever the case may be, but I don't know. Just to me, it was one of those. He could have done better. Now, I don't know if he's still there or not, and I don't remember his fucking name to save my life. Dylan was his first name. That's all I remember. Not Mulvaney, but anyway. I had listened to this on the relatively short, which varies from video to video, if men need to be heard on YouTube. And it was asking about having a body cam on you. And what he ended up saying at the end of it all is that it almost is a case of that at all times, whenever possible, have a body cam on you recording yourself 24/7. Or if you're going to be around a woman, or if you're going to be near a woman, it's almost one of those, it's just best to click, turn it on, and away you go. And
another work suggestion here is that your involvement with women at the work site consists of hello, goodbye.
No.
That's it.
No. Well, yeah, you're going to have to keep it professional, but even then, you're likely to get complaints with HR because you're not being friendly enough. But if you're not attractive enough, you're harassing. But if you don't say anything, then it's harassment. And it's just one of those, women don't know what the fuck they want in their life. I'd apologize for saying that, but let's be honest. I'm sorry. Women want everything at the same time. They want the attention, but it's got to be the right guy. Well, who's the right guy? Well, they sure as shit aren't going to fucking tell you now, are they? No, they're not. And this is where my still being in the red pill rage. It's really a case of, like, You can't trust them. I'm sorry, but you just cannot trust a woman in this day and age. They're incentivized because I'm empowered. Yeah, you're right. You absolutely are empowered. And guess what? When what you do to enough guys gets around, like the reputation of a woman at that woman I was talking about from before from work that wanted to cheat on her boyfriend at the time. She had the reputation for being the company bicycle. You will acquire a reputation, and it's not going to be a good one. It's not going to be as bad as being the company bike or the neighborhood bicycle, or you're the carousel that's constantly looking for the next thing to sit on. But you're going to have a very lonely life, a very lonely existence at some point because it will literally be a case of where men at work, and if there's men that you're going to have to work with, are going to keep it professional. If they're going to keep you very much at arm's length, and if they're going to be smart enough, they'll make sure that there's going to be another guy there to back up what you're going to say. And again, false accusations. My brother, again, fucking woman that was working underneath him. She was going through a messy divorce. She took it out on my brother. This was when Campbell's Soup was still in Canada, and because of that shit, I'm never touching their fucking soup ever again. He was immediately demoted. They investigated him, found nothing wrong, but he was told he could not get his former position and he could not move into another position within the company. And I think that's going to be one of those moments in my life. It didn't affect me, but it affected my brother. We're not close, but he's family. Love the man. But you don't do that kind of shit. So you'll have to pardon me for not having any sympathy. Like my level of anger and overt aggression towards women overall, it's not stopping at this point. I don't know when I'm going to be out of the red pill rage. And at this point, I don't really care. I really don't.
Yeah, but anyway, so decide whether you need to lawyer up or not.
Yeah.
The next move to make, and
Mhm.
this is one that depends upon where you happen to be living. If it's a domestic abuse situation, get your stuff out of there. For the love of God, make sure she doesn't sell it. If she does sell it, I hate to say this, but I mean, that is theft. And if she's going to keep doing this and she's going to stick by that decision, then you need to really consider that. If she has a restraining order against you, keep in mind that there's this really weird loophole in a restraining order that allows her to approach you, but you cannot approach her. And I've read a couple
Typical. Typical double standards.
There's a couple of situations where this one ex had a restraining order against her boyfriend or her husband, and she knew which bar she was going to. So she would go up to him and start talking to him in this bar and saying stuff that basically pushed his buttons. And he did manage to successfully push his buttons, and he broke the restraining order agreement by going over and speaking to her. Right? If this is a situation where a restraining order is being used, get one for her. And I hate to say it that way, but that way, because I mean, again, if you're familiar with the documentary Divorce Court, lawyers are especially adept. Divorce lawyers in particular are especially adept at telling either spouse, it's usually the one, but telling either spouse how to get around that. Um, if she sells your stuff, that's theft. You can, and you, especially if it's a smaller town, it'll probably be fairly easy to figure out where she sold it or who she sold it to. And yeah, she will have to do the stuff. If you had a working brain ahead of time, and guys, if you're married, even if marriage is happy and amicable and functional,
Mm-hmm.
anything that is exclusively your property, you need to put some type of an identified, like something that can't be just washed off with a rag. I too, like something on there, like a stamp or something like that, that identifies it as yours if she tries to sell it off.
So what's mine is hers, and what's hers is hers.
Exactly.
Her
So
money
you
is
need
my
to,
money
yeah.
is her.
So
Yeah, her money is my money. Sorry, my money is her money. Her money is her money. Gotcha.
yeah, so I mean, you need to do that just in case he tries to sell it up. And yes, that has happened. That's actually happened quite a few times. In the case of a false stalking accusation, this one is actually relatively easy, except for if the, like, for instance, I didn't bring her. I'm not going to bring her up tonight, although I have posted stuff up on my video channels about the woman by the name of Nahir Galarza. Um,
Okay.
I could also bring up Emma Sokolowitz from the Columbia Mattress Girl case. Um, the In both of those situations, the guy realized that the woman that he was dealing with was incredibly toxic and dangerous in the situation. And this is the big issue on all three of these, is you have to worry potentially about the white knight,
Oh
right?
God. Yeah.
Um, that's a big one. You have to worry about the white knight. Now, in the case of Nahir Galarza and Emma Silkowitz, both of Paul Noongazer, and I can't remember who the boyfriend was of Nahir Galarza, both of those guys tried to transfer. Paul Noongazer tried to transfer to another university. Unfortunately, he couldn't. The girlfriend of Nahir Galarza tried to transfer to another college and found out that he couldn't. In the case of Nahir Galarza, though, the guy could have probably still moved. Now, Nahir Galarza is just like, and I'm going to have to go and find a photo of her and put it up in the feed just so that you know exactly what type of, just how really incredibly good looking.
Was an Argentinian judicial process in which the 19-year-old was convicted of murdering a 20-year-old. Oh, good God.
Yeah, this is an incredible, like, this, you got to understand, this is an incredible. Oh yeah, here we go. Yeah, I'll find a good photo of her,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I'll
I see her on Wiki. I don't. You know me. Yellow fever. I wouldn't really look at this female just because she's got dyed blonde hair, and that for me, that's just one of those. Eh, not
well,
looking.
again, right? I mean, I have met blonde Hispanics before, so it's like,
That's. I'm not saying
um,
they don't exist. I'm not saying they don't exist. But what I'm saying, yeah. Anyway, you know me.
yeah. So yeah, hold on a second here. I'm trying to find a good photo of her. I'll put a photo of her up here, just so that you know. Why the hell do I keep getting WebP Pro pictures? Jesus Christ. Oh, for God's sakes. Okay. Well, no, I'm not gonna. I'll just keep looking here.
Yeah.
All the best photos of her always seem to be WebP profile pictures, which is a real pain in the ass because I can't stand WebP photos. Oh, it's in a beef. It'll do. Okay, so I will post up a photo of Nahir Galarza. The problem is, and this is the same sort of situation that I ran into with that psychotic chick in Banff. Um, that psychotic chick in Banff, and I'm not going to mention her, and I'm not going to mention her name right now. I mean, it was. Okay, why is it not coming up here? Oh, for God's sakes. Yeah, I'm just gonna have to keep trying here.
Okay.
Yeah. So what ended up happening is that because this girl was young and pretty, and like she's one of those women. I mean, I'm looking at photos of her right now. Um, on a scale from 1 to 10, this chick's at least an 8. You know, keep in mind this woman is so bad that she actually threw, even though her dad was a police officer, she actually threw her own father under the bus
Oh my
at
god.
one point. Yeah, that's the type of person that we're dealing with here. Um,
Well, well, okay. That's not to
but
say that men. Okay, this is not to say that men don't exhibit the same kind of traits. We do, but I don't think that we're going to be so freaking irrational that we're going to behave like that.
yeah. Oh, wait, I finally got one. All right,
Okay.
there we go. Yeah, I'll post her up. Anyway, like again, I didn't want to bring up Nahir Galarza, but this is the issue when I'm talking about with white knights. In the case of this particular woman, she was able to manipulate a couple of other guys into doing her dirty work for her. And yeah, there we go. I'll show off. See, yeah, this isn't the best photo of her, but it's the one that's not a WebP or an
Eh,
FB file. Yeah, it's not. I
she's
see.
an she's an
Again,
eight.
it's okay.
I
I
put her.
told you, dude. She's not. This is not a particularly good photo of her, but it's the only one that I could find
Yeah.
that wasn't either in a VIF or a WebP photo.
Okay.
Sorry, man. It's the best that I
Oh
can
my
do.
god, I'm so offended. That's all good. It's all good.
Anyway,
Yep.
yeah, the problem with I'm going to show a different picture, and yeah, at least with me, this woman's again. She's pretty enough that like guys, especially in particular white knights, will like look at this particular woman and will you know like they will do whatever it is they want to do, and that's the situation, especially if you're living in a small town. This is what happened to me, right? Like the one that I was dealing with, and yeah, you saw photos of her. I mean, she wasn't like wow good looking. Okay, I
Hmm.
think I've got a better photo of her right here. Okay, yeah, this is a better one. Yeah, see, yeah, that one's a slightly better one. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, she's definitely above, at least in my opinion, well above average. And this is the issue. You've got to deal with. This is the thing. You're dealing with white knights here, and it's the one particular situation that happened with me back in 2001. Uh, the white knight situation got so bad that you know somebody could have potentially either and not even necessarily directly killed or put in the hospital. Somebody could have ended up getting killed or being somebody could have ended up dying indirectly from what she did, and this girl would have gotten away with it completely unresolved. In fact, Miss 2016, and I remember I was telling you about this one, even though there was no stalking or anything involved in this.
Hmm.
The boyfriend had been at one point, he drove by and he tossed something at me. I didn't see it coming. If it had hit me in the head and knocked me out, it probably could have potentially killed me. Fortunately, it didn't, and I turned around and started heading back to the car they were at, and they just drove off really, really quickly. But this guy was making, like, the guy she was banging me over was making routine of course, he would always do it from the safety of his car and with the safety of 2 or 3 guys backing him up, or especially, and I saw this 2016 sitting in the seat next to him on 2 different occasions. You know, at one point, this guy tried to beat me off on the street, and I didn't recognize him immediately. When I did recognize him, I turned around, and my decision at that point was I was going to put this guy in the hospital. Right? Fortunately,
Yeah.
I came about 3/4 of the way back. I came to my senses, and the guy wasn't there. But I'm just saying that stuff happens when you have an emotionally charged situation like this, which is why you have to make a really. Now, I don't know. Now, in the situation with the one back in '94 at Banff, I really did not want to leave Banff, so I stuck it out. And I mean, in hindsight, the problem with with this sort of shit going on in a smaller town is that you cannot necessarily avoid her, and you can definitely not avoid the white knights. And yeah, there are guys out there that are so effing stupid that they will threaten you over her. And this is something that you have to be aware of when you're taking stock of a false accusation situation. You have to make these are some hard decisions, and you have to get your ego out of the way. Like sometimes, and again, with the case of Nahir Galarza, the town, like by the way, her dad was the chief of police.
Oh God! Talk about a spoiled, entitled little bitch. Fuck.
Yeah. The guy grew up there with her, so all of his friends were in the same town as her. Now, he let other people know what was going on with her, and he made the mistake of staying in that town instead of just leaving. Had he left, and this is something that happened with the one back in '94, she got elected. I did not know this, but she got elected. It wasn't in Banff, it was another town, another city, which, by the way, I ended up working in for about 6 months. That was a rather awkward. And this is the other thing about false accusations too, and it's something you also have to keep in mind. Even decades later, you still have to watch your fucking back, right? Like when I was in this town, I kept as low a profile as humanly possible. Why did I keep a low profile as humanly possible? Well, turns out that the town I was working in, Psycho Girl, used to be on the city council. Her husband ran a business that I drove by literally every day on my way to buy lunch for work before I headed out to where I was working. Like that's the issue with false accusations. Like they will follow you around in unexpected ways, at unexpected times, and unexpected places. Now, it turns out that she wasn't no longer on city council because I don't know why, but she was asked to quit. Don't know what the situation was or why she was asked to quit, but they obviously felt it was important enough that they had to put it up at their town website to announce that she quit.
If I may say, I would hazard a guess. Oh, Leopard. I should listen to Def Leppard later tonight after this. At the end of it all, I mean, if they've asked her to step down, chances are that the behavior that she exhibited towards you, she couldn't
she was
stop
definitely she was exhibiting it towards other people. She was probably also stealing money as well. I don't know exactly why, but she was asked to step down, and when she stepped down, they made a public spectacle out of it.
She was toxic, very obviously.
Probably. Anyway, but so you have to start to look at this particular. You need to keep in mind also Because, I mean, at times, even from people who are your friends, they're going to, and this is something that, again, that I ran into with this one particular coworker of mine. Like, they will not necessarily be willing to consider the fact that maybe this was a false accusation because they had a sister that happened, or they have a female
Oh,
relative that happened, or whatever,
yeah.
right? You know,
I, I,
and you have
I,
to kind of like, and you have to put your foot down with them and go, fuck, I didn't do, or this person didn't do it, right?
yeah.
Like, yeah, like,
Hmm.
this is a very emotional, the stuff like this is very charged. And, when you're in this particular, again, you know, you've decided whether or not you've recruited allies. If you're in a small town, you had definitely have to recruit allies. If you're in a city, all you really got to do is just simply like avoid that particular the places that she particularly. If you're in a situation where you have a lot of overlap, I hate to say this, and you're gonna have to get your ego out of the way when I tell you this, but you're probably gonna have to like rearrange your life to try and avoid her. Right? It's a lot easier to do in a city. Um, if she's got your home, and you still have to recruit male allies. In one of the cases, again, Miss 2016, because this guy was threatening me and like throwing shit at me as he was driving by in a vehicle. I knew where this guy happened to live, so I had to go to his place at night because I knew he parked his car out on the street. I had to take a photo of his license plate, and I had to send this out to a few friends of mine. And I had to go, if I turned up mysteriously dead or disappeared or in the hospital and can't talk about it, this is the license plate of the person you need to go start asking questions to. Make sure this license plate gets to the police.
Hmm.
Yeah, you're starting to understand now why 2016 was such a bad experience for me.
Yeah.
Um,
I'm
you
not.
know,
Yeah. I'm not surprised with this behavior with what you've told me over the past, and we're not going to rehash that.
yeah, we're
But
not.
yeah.
But yeah, so the whole situation is that, I mean, like, you've processed the stuff, and you've made an assessment of the situation. You've recruited allies. You've decided whether you're going to go or whether you're going to stay. Cannot emphasize this strongly enough, and I don't know why I didn't say this. Don't get caught by yourself with her, either by accident or on purpose. Um, Also, man, if it determine whether this is just going to like fade out or whether this is going to continue for a while. If it's going to continue for a while, if you're in a small town, um, start. I hate it again. This really sucks to have to do this, but it's probably a very good idea. Start keeping a notebook of where you've gone and what you've done. Start documenting where you've been. Yeah, I get it. You didn't do anything wrong. You're innocent. You didn't. It's like, yeah, you know what? Duluth model, white knights. They're not going to check. They're not going to care, right? In a lot of cases,
That,
sometimes not even the police are going to care unless you
if I
make them.
may, if I may, my apologies for wanting to step in here. But much like it took what 3 generations, and MGTOW is where it is. I Something similar will start to happen with white knighting, and I think that there will be within 20 years, and that's a long period of time for most people at this point. But I think within 20 years, you'll probably start to see white knighting start to drop off, and
Oh,
hopefully it's going to hit that cliff, say about the 10-year mark. But gravity hasn't quite taken effect. But once it does, it'll accelerate.
well, the manosphere has to reach a certain level in a stage. It's still at stage 3 right now. It hasn't hit stage 4, stage 5, or whatever. Like, I mean, it is. what I have discovered with white knights that have come on to male spaces on Facebook is that when they start piping up their rhetoric, they either get booted or they get seriously challenged and they lose
Okay.
their credibility, or in the case of the one particular individual I was just dealing with up until about 2 days ago, the guy just disappears. But getting back to the actual situation here, right? Yeah, even in a big city though, like if it reaches the point where she is starting to send guys, white knights, or heaven forbid, if the actual, and this has happened as well, where you get a sheriff or a police officer or a judge or somebody from CPS or whatever, and you get one of those or you get somebody at a feminist organization that decides that they're going to be the rescue ranger here and
Oh God.
knows all the laws and whatever, you're going to have to lawyer up immediately.
Mhm.
Start documenting everything. If you happen to know where this white knight who's continuously making threats to you lives, get as much information on him as you can and pass it on to your friends, specifically your family if you have a tight knit family. If you have a lawyer, pass it on to your lawyer. So if something unforetold happens to you, they will know where to start looking.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's insane to have to take, and I mean, I can understand maybe there's going to be somebody in the comments is going to go like, don't you think this is a little bit insane? Like, don't you
Mm-mm.
think that maybe getting a little overly paranoid? The chances of some of you running into a woman like this is like one in like 1,000 or tens of thousands or whatever. Yeah, like not every woman is like this. That is absolutely true. Thing is though that there are women like this out there. They do look for and pick guys that are going to be perceived as less threatening, and for whatever reason those are the ones that they will target with false accusations because they are less likely to fight back. The good news is that if you choose to start fighting back, you know, they will usually disappear, but not always. um, if you get First of all, like, let's define what assault is too. Like, even pushing you on the street, even slapping. And I had an incident like this happen back in December. Slapping a coffee out of your hand is assault. If they do anything like that, go to the cops and file a report. Like, let this woman know that you're not fooling around, right? Like sometimes they will actually be insane enough to keep going. But, if they know that they've actually got a fight on their hands, most of the time they will back away, right? Just like a male feminist. Most of the time they will just simply back away, but not always. Um, like if you get the situation, like say with Nahir Galarza, whose dad was chief of police, right? They think they've got a little bit of immunity. They've got the resources to start fighting back. Yeah, you might actually have a situation on your hands. Seriously, if it is possible, if it gets to that scenario, like you have to consider how important your ego is to you. Yeah, I get it, man. These are your friends, right? This is the town you grew up in, right? Like you're going to be separated from your family, in some cases, probably for years, right? Like you're not going to be living in the same vicinity as they are. Like you're not going to be going to family gatherings or anything more. Like that's a tough thing to say to to deal with over a woman who decided that she just needed to go after you for the attention. Um, so yeah, those are some very tough decisions to make. And I'm going to keep saying this over and over and over again. If you are innocent and you know you were innocent and you know that you weren't doing anything to her, you didn't do anything wrong, right? Sometimes it might take a few years, but the truth usually, but not always, but usually will win out. Although sometimes, there's third parties or whatever. Most of the time, though, the truth has a habit of winning out. Now, going into the defensive tactics at work. Your interactions with women at work consist of hello, goodbye, nice to see you, unless you specifically have to deal with a woman
Oh,
immediately
don't
in your
don't
space.
don't even say nice to see you. Hello, goodbye.
Hello, goodbye.
Don't
That's it.
don't give her the opportunity to misconstrue that.
Anything. There's a scene from from a relatively unknown movie that starred Ben Affleck called The Accountant, where this one he was working literally as an accountant, and this one secretary started flirting with him as he's walking into the office, and like the accountant, like Ben Affleck, looks at her and just goes, "Hello, nice to see you," and just keeps walking, right? Doesn't stop to talk to her. Now, you don't necessarily have to be that rude, but limit your associations with women at work at all times. So sometimes, again, this is not absolutely drawn out in stone. Sometimes you're in a situation like where both me and Steve were, where it's like literally every woman around you is your coworker, like at a place, at a resort or something like that. Um, I don't know what to tell you in that case. Your coworkers are the ones that you immediately work with. But I mean, again, like some people can make workplace romance work. I was never one of those people.
Well,
Um,
it did work for me. Now I wish it didn't.
but yeah, so um,
Anyway,
you have to make the decision whether or not you want to. If you now then if also right, what if you decide to stand and fight? Right. Again, I read a story way back in 2006 where some guy did decide to stand and fight, and what ended up happening is that she sent white knights over to his place, and they actually burst into his apartment. He was able to hide in the bathroom until the cops showed up, and yeah, she did eventually get jail time for it.
good.
But yeah, if it is
Fuck.
that dangerous, a geographical solution needs to be seriously considered, irregardless of the financial or emotional or physical investment you have in the place that you're currently staying.
Hmm.
You know, yeah, I understand that is a big deal, especially for guys in the manosphere, because that's giving that woman a lot of power, right? Yeah, but I mean, it's like it's either like, but I mean, you're free of her because usually with women like this, it's out of sight, out of mind, right?
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
free of her and you don't have to worry about her following you, especially since you're probably not going to be telling any of her associate group where you live or what you're doing. That is something that you have to seriously consider. Um, Now, here's some, and I haven't gotten into this because there's actually some very easy signs that you can spot that will give you an indication that something's wrong. If you get even one of these, it doesn't matter if she was doing it because she has a boyfriend or whatever. And I hate having to be this blunt. If in case there's any women that are listening to this, I hate having to be this blunt. But unfortunately, ladies, um, and I understand this really isn't particularly fair because like you could flip this around and say, well, all other guys are guilty because men rape and blah. And then by the way, that is a feminist narrative. Um, but
Shocker.
because you have not, in general, called these women out to task for their behavior, you have basically forced men in the manosphere, in particular MGTOW guys, to potentially treat every single woman that he runs across like a container of nitroglycerin.
I would just I would just rather use the word hostile. I think
Oh,
it's more
hostile.
appropriate, really.
That's potentially hostile, dangerous. A bottle of nitroglycerin. You have like a loaded firearm. Like you have to treat every woman that you come across that way. Now, I understand there's going to be some women that are going to listen to this and think that's misogynistic. I don't care.
Well,
I don't care.
then stop being misandrist.
You know, if but one of the big signs, and I have seen this from every single woman that has falsely accused me, and guys that have had multiple false accused. And by the way, there is a personality type which I went into earlier. And again, right, let me just go back over this personality type again. Polite, considerate, not pushy, generally soft spoken, not overly aggressive, basically quote unquote non-threatening,
So
right?
in other words, a nice guy.
A nice guy. Yeah. Um those are the types of guys that these women will pick out, and they will pick these guys out because they're nice guys, and they will try to work things out, or they will just let the situation sit because they don't want to make a fuss. And unfortunately, you have to make a fuss. You have to go to the police. You have to potentially lawyer up. You have to make moves. You have to recruit allies, right? You have to let people around you know what is going on. And but one of the big signs, based on everything that I've read and the things that I have experienced, that the one big, huge common denominator on all of them is that in every single case and because I've done the review on some of the ones that I've had to deal with, right? Mixed messages, lack of clear messaging.
Oh,
So
they're
unless
notorious.
you're
Women are notorious for that. I'm sorry. They're absolutely notorious for that.
Well, I mean, yeah, they are, but I mean, there's generally going to be like there's difference between yeah, there is a slight difference. Um, you know, like there's mixed messaging, and then there is like mixed messaging in a way where when you encounter the woman in one scenario, she's all polite and friendly to you, and in another scenario where you're say in the same building as her, or you're sitting in the same restaurant, she's with some of your friends, and they're all looking at you like you've done something wrong, and you're getting that feeling in your gut that you're getting an uh-oh feeling in your gut, like you
Uh,
need to listen to that.
yeah,
you
time
know
to bolt.
there's a
Yeah.
there's a big difference, right? um like
It's time. It's time to be like you're a sprinter from Jamaica. Usain Bolt. Out you go.
Yeah. Again, right, you have to look after your own personal safety, and also the guys that are around her, especially the white knights, not even necessarily her boyfriend, but the guys like, again, I'm going to go back to Nahir Galarza here, right? Now, Rearson doesn't agree with me on one of the photos. I'm saying that this photo here, like, that's a solid 8. It's not the best photo I've seen of her, but it's the only one that I could get that wasn't I mean, yeah, okay, her nose is a little bit big, but yeah, man, that body is just fucking rocking it. Like there's absolutely no question about it. Yeah, solid 8. Um this is the type of woman, especially someone like her, that you guys will break the law on the off, and this is why I despise white knights. They will like make themselves look absolutely and utterly stupid on the off chance that this woman will sleep with her, with him, with her. And you know, that is a serious situation. And in one particular situation, that happened to me. Like this guy, this is one in 2001. This guy, even after she had relapsed, this guy was still threatening me, beaking me off, and making it uncomfortable for me to be in certain situations. And I had to confront him on that. And I wasn't polite about it. You have to, and I mean, in the end, and that what happened in that particular situation is that I recruited allies, and they were able to work the situation, and they were able to basically even they were able to put her on the spot and get her to admit that she wasn't the sweet innocent party that she was supposed to be. But I mean, again, this is not a guarantee, right? Like your first aim at any type of a false accusation is to protect yourself, protect your property, and protect your life, and protect your integrity, right? If you hit one that is really disturbed, like Nahir Galarza, it's going to get really bad. And we will be doing a case study of 2 or 3 particular situations here. I know I'm not going to bring up Amber Heard, although Amber Heard is going to be kind of tied in with what happened between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. We will be getting into that in a few minutes, but yeah, you need to protect yourself. And if you're going to have to make some hard decisions about your work, about where you live, about who your friends are and are not. And yeah, that is going to potentially involve moving to another town, or maybe even moving to another time zone to potentially get away from the heat, because in some cases the heat is going to be really bad. In a worst case scenario, right, you've got a guy who isn't even this woman's girlfriend threatening to fucking kill you. And don't laugh, I have read stories like that, or worse. And I've actually listened to a story like this. You get a police officer with an axe to grind who keeps trying to create charges. And this is a worst case scenario, but this has happened. Dean Esme, a guy who I'm not really particularly close to, but I mean, he used to deal with this. Dean Esme talked about one particular individual where the police officer just had an axe to grind with this guy and kept coming up with criminal charges and forcing this guy to go back into court like 3 times before the guy was finally able to lawyer up and get legal representation. And they went over and talked to the chief of police in the city, and said, if you do this again, we're going to sue you, and we will make it public, and we will make it ugly. Like, yeah, that's how bad it can get. And like, yeah, am I being paranoid by taking it to this type of an extreme? No, I'm not. This can happen. Okay. In most cases, what will happen is, because you're the nice guy and whatever, and she finds out that you have a little bit more of a backbone than you realize, right? The moment things start to get ugly, or the moment things start to get serious, like she will just back right off. And the whole situation, although she will say it to her friends privately about you, she won't go public about it. But there are situations where it doesn't. And unfortunately, you have to consider the worst possible scenario. And it's unfortunate that it has reached this point where you have to treat every woman as a potential threat. And no, I'm not paranoid for saying this, but I mean, this is the reason why MGTOW is currently thriving. Because any involvement that a guy has with a woman, that woman can at any point in time decide to accuse you of something. And the process of the punishment, and I'm going to go back over this, right? You've got the Duluth law. You've got white knight lawyers, you've got white knight cops, you've got the fact that most people will not ask questions, right? And you'll end up with, yeah, you're kind of fucked, right? And it's tough to have to like make major adjustments in your life just to have peace of mind, but that is what in a lot of cases you have to do now. Again, with the ones that I was dealing with in Banff, in those particular cases, and when things got serious, things changed. But I mean, in the situation that happened with a different woman about a year and a half later, I had to go get the police to deal with it. Right? And understand that if you are, and I am, unfortunately, the type of guy, or used to be, because this hasn't happened to me in years now, because I'm not the nice guy anymore. I'm polite, I'm considerate still, but I have boundaries. I'm the honorable man. And I've done a video on that, which is available at BitChute and Odyssey. Don't know whether it's available at Rumble or not, called The Honorable Man. You have to have boundaries. You know, be polite, be considerate, even be kind sometimes, but have boundaries. And if you run into the asshole, or you run into individuals that are causing trouble, which is currently what I'm dealing with at work here, enforce those boundaries. Or sometimes, in the case of what's happening with me on my job right now, sometimes the safe thing happens by accident. But yeah, that is really all I've got to say. Understand that if you've been falsely accused, you didn't do anything wrong. Don't try to handle it by yourself. And one last thing, don't expect for the woman to take accountability, because it's not going to happen. And there's going to be a lot of people that are not going to fact check. And I'm going to turn over to Rearson, and then we're going to go over 3 particular case studies, and then we're going to call it a night. So, Rearson, have your say, and then we'll get into the 3 case studies.
Well, I think for me, and perhaps anyone else that's kind of thinking how I am, or thinks along similar lines, I guess that's probably about the better way to say it. Hope for the best, assume the worst. And I do mean assume the worst. I mean, there was one thing that I learned from. He was a security guard for the East Village Superstore, and one of the few actual white guys that actually was working there, and really laid back. When it came down to, I knew enough, could see that it's like, oh, I've never worked as security or event staff. Well, no, I've worked as event staff, but anyway, when there's one of those, what the hell's going on over there sort of thing, and that's from him, it's like, well, okay, gotta let you go. See you later, goodbye, talk to you later. And what he has showed me is that if there's anybody that seems to be suspicious that he's going to have to approach or is approaching him, he's got the cell phone on his chest. He immediately, boom, hits the button to record. Off you go. And the Spy Store that is on McLeod Trail in Calgary, one of the things that they have available for you to buy is either a pen. You can buy a clock, like a traditional actual hand clock, where kids these days, literal children, can't fucking read time. But they've also got one for glasses. So let's think about that for a moment. If I feel that I am in that much potential, not danger, but there's that much risk to me, and I have to look at getting a pair of glasses with my prescription in it to cover my ass, well, you know what? I'm going to have to fucking do it. And I'd almost would be best to have, and this would be really good on the part of someone at work. I would probably get two pairs. One would be my actual pair of glasses, and then another pair where I would have contact lenses, and it would just be a set of false lenses. And swap those out, wait for the other one to charge up, put them on, go to the bathroom, take out the contacts, put the prescription lenses on, the prescription glasses on, and then go about the rest of my day at work, and do that constantly, 3 to 4, say about 2 to 3 times a day at work. Does it suck? Yeah, it does. Is it a pain in the ass? Absolutely. But you never know when you're going to need to actually have the proof to back up your side of the story because, well, she's having a bad day. And the way they said, hi, how are you? Or hi, good morning, or whatever. She's got one nerve left and you've just stomped all over it and you just didn't know it. And you wonder why that relationships between the sexes is fucking degrading because I'm sorry, folks, I really am, but this whole thing of hyper, not sexualizing, hyper prioritizing women's sense of safety and security is causing relationships to die. It's because it is. I mean, in a sense, I understand how, and I get why Muslim culture is the way that it is that men are in charge, and that's basically it. End of story. Things are changing again, where it's becoming progressively more feminized, and it's not there yet. But I mean, apparently, way back in like in the 1200s, 1100s, somewhere around there, Muslim women were fucking floozies, like just they were tossing it out, and it came down to is that nope, we need to be in charge. You're here for this purpose. We need to do this. And society only works because we're in charge and you're not. You know, that sort of thing. So it's yeah, I really don't have much more to say. I got to deal with what's going on in the fucking background anyway. So Neroke, back to you. Okay. Neroke, are you there or what?
Oh my God! Sorry, I don't know what the hell happened there. My mic just. I thought I had unmuted my mic.
Sorry, folks. We had about 2 minutes of awkward, unexpected silence. You want to try that again?
Okay, so let's just sum this up. Okay, after you have done after you've gotten past the initial shock and anger and rage, take stock of your situation, right? Make sure that you do an inventory of what you've done. Try to remember where you've been, etc., etc., etc. Understand that determine whether or not you actually are innocent or not, because yeah, there are actually times when the guy might actually be guilty. There are actual situations where this happens. um then make a determination on her. Try to decide for yourself whether this is a situation that requires just simply someplace you're just going to have to tough it out for a while, or whether you're actually dealing with a third party here that's going to make the situation even worse than it actually is, or whether she is going to try to escalate the situation. Make a determination whether she's going to do that. And that will become fairly obvious within a week, within a few days, whether she's going to keep the situation going or not. If she chooses to keep the situation going, and she probably will, at this point, you will I mean, before you even find out, start recruiting allies.
I think your mic went sideways on you, just like women's attitudes can easily do that for most guys. Yeah, I know. Okay, I can't. You've gone silent again. Not that you've intentionally done so. God. All right, I'll fill in until he gets his mic back up and running here again. I would think you're going to have to do some shit testing with your friends. I don't like using that term because Lord knows, seems to be that's a preoccupation for women to do that to men. But if you're going to have to do something along those lines, you will need to know who your friends are. And as was the case with that guy where his best friend was stabbing him in the back, how are you going to test that out? Well, you'll have to figure that out. I mean, it's not fun for anybody to do, but you'll have to kind of play it, I think, like how Paris Hilton did that with Lionel Richie's daughter, where she told her something as a blatant lie, and she spread it around like freaking bar horse spreading freaking herpes in your hometown. You know, that sort of thing. And you can basically gauge who is and who isn't your friend. Or I would think at the end of the day, you can also see who's going to have your back when you need help the most. And if they don't, well, you know what? That's fine. They don't. Walk away and drop them. So, oh, did I drop off here? Hold on. Okay. Okay, are we still doing this, or is this still going on, or what? Let's see anything show up. What's going on over here? My apologies. Odd. Alright, well, I don't know what's going on here, so I'm going to leave. Nothing personal to Sam. Okay, but I'm Going to be done. Oh, okay. My apologies, folks. It looks like there might be some possible issues. Don't care, don't care, don't care. All right, I think we might be experiencing some unexpected technical difficulties. I've informed Neroke of what might be going on here, and excuse me a moment, folks. I do apologize. Text has been sent, and we'll find out what's going to happen here. Truth be told, this is not what I was hoping to have happen. Don't care, don't care, don't care. I suppose this is the case of, yep, technology works for you until it doesn't. Okay, I think I might just take myself out of all of this. Live chats. I do apologize. I was not expecting something like this to happen, but I guess in the sense of it, I'm glad that I was on here with him. I'm going to give him a call and see what's going on. So hold on, please. Bear with us. Unexpected difficulties. I don't know if it's his machine or if it's I'm working. I don't know. I'm going to reload myself here and see what's going on. Okay, Neroke, are you there or no? Okay, Roger. Apparently, you seem to be here in the podcast. I would ask you, my friend, to please message me in Skype. If you're hearing me, did you hear Neroke or did you hear anything at all? Just want to try to narrow this down here. Again, folks, this is totally unexpected, but not surprising, I suppose, is about the best way to say it. Yeah, exactly. Oh, sorry. Weird. That might be best. I think Neroke is to just end it for now and try it again later. My apologies, folks. I should have muted myself from doing that. Oh, I can hear you now.
Okay, yeah, all right, so yeah, now we fixed the technical issues. I had to restart the I had to restart this. I had to refresh here. So yeah, let's just get this over with really quickly because it's almost 11 o'clock and we've been on almost 2 hours now. And we had technical difficulties here. Now, one of the things that so yeah, let's go back to John Gomeshi here. This goes back to 2014, 2015, 2016. Now, the whole thing with what went on here is that he again, right? Jean Gomeshi is and was a male feminist. And because he was a male feminist, he also had a particularly nasty he had a fetish for he had a BDSM fetish, and one of the women that he got involved with three different women. Now, one of the women that he got involved with was a woman by the name of Lucy de Gaturi. Now, Lucy de Gaturi um, decided to got together
She colluded.
with a couple.
Let's call it for what it is. She colluded with with the other.
She colluded with a couple of other women. They chose to hide behind the rape shield law, and what ended up happening is that they went around and they colluded. They went around and they ran a press campaign in an attempt to make Jean Gomeshi appear guilty. And two of the three women decided to use the rape shield law to hide themselves. The one that chose to come out in public was going by the name of Lucy de Gaturi. Uh, Fortunately, Jean Gomeshi had a really good lawyer. And because he had a really good lawyer, what ended up happening, and he had also for some odd reason, he had kept all of the correspondence between him and Lucy de Gaturi on the case. And what ended up happening is that, during the trial, it was revealed that, I mean, Lucy de Gaturi, in the words of the court reporters that were there. This one veteran court reporter said that she had seen like cases, had seen like bad testimony from it. But in the words of this reporter, Lucy DeGaturi bombed was one of the, if she had seen another testimony, prosecution, witness bomb that bad, she had to see it. The only other time I have seen a prosecution witness tank that badly was the opening day of the Kyle Rittenhouse trial, when that one prosecution witness just tanked so bad that one of the prosecuting attorneys literally face palmed while the guy was testifying, and you kind of knew at that point. Well, this was the same type of situation that occurred here. What had happened, though, is that in the press, Jean Gomeshi had his reputation destroyed. And again, I got to point out here that Jean Gomeshi was not completely innocent. Jean Gomeshi is into, and by the way, if you know women who are into this, like, yeah, fucking run. Like, if you know a woman that is into like BDSM, or if you know a guy that's into BDSM, but if you know a woman that's into BDSM, like, fucking run. Okay, like, it has been my experience that the women that are into this sort of thing are mentally.
She's fucking crazy. Yeah,
That
yeah,
would be a
yeah,
nice
yeah.
way. That would be a nice way of putting it. What ended up happening during this testimony and during cross-examination, Gomeshi's defense lawyer brought out a paper because Lucy DeGaturi was like, "Oh, I was petrified, I was scared," and like they actually got her on the date. What ended up happening is that the lawyer for Jean Gomeshi came up and says, and she confirmed the date, and then she brought out a series of notes that she had sent Jean Gomeshi after the dates that she claimed that this had happened, including one that said, "I would really like to fuck your brains out." And she wrote this before the alleged. Actually, I think it was after the alleged incident.
Oh wow!
The press did
I'm
not.
sorry. I'm sorry, but I can, okay. Much like I can't watch Star Wars anymore because of Mark Hamill, I can never watch Quarter Gas anymore because of her.
Lucy, that was the Trailer Park Boys. It's not Courtney Guest. She was in the Trailer Park Boys.
Really?
Yeah, she was an actress in the Trailer Park Boys.
I thought she was in Quarter Gas. Okay, my bad.
No, it wasn't good. It wasn't Courtney Guest.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Anyway, no kidding. Jean Gomeshi was found not guilty. All of the press coverage that I saw of the case, though, made out Lucy DeGaturi as the victim, even though, and none of the coverage I saw of this mentioned the fact that Lucy DeGaturi got destroyed. Thank you, Roger. I had to refresh. The none of the stories, none of the articles reported this. Jean Gomeshi has never really recovered to the same level that he did. And the problem with Jean Gomeshi was the fact that because he was a male feminist, that even guys in the manosphere were very, very hesitant to want to support him. Karen Strawn, aka Girls Rights What, basically said it perfectly. As far as I'm concerned, Jean Gomeshi could go sit on a bag of dicks, but this is what's actually going on here. Now, the whole situation with this, and this is the part that really makes it bad, which is why I'm glad the motherfucker's not the prime minister anymore. Justin Trudeau, Bill C-10, changed the laws of discovery in Canada, which will make sure that nothing like what happened with Jean Gomeshi will happen ever again. Justin Trudeau had lawyers who looked at the situation, and even though Lucy Dugaturi lied through her teeth, they went around and they passed this law anyway. That's unofficially known as the Jean Gomeshi statutes. But again, right, this is a case of, because Lucy Dugaturi also did this with one of her co-stars, right? The two other women that accused Jean Gomeshi are still protected by the rape shield law, even though Jean Gomeshi is innocent of all charges. People to this day still think that Jean Gomeshi actually did the things he did and got away with them, when in actual fact he didn't do them, right? The case study here is, and I mean, I'm going to have to assume that this is it. Like, one, Jean Gomeshi is a male feminist. So, and this, keep in mind that this happened back 2014, 2014, right? The manosphere was not around nearly as much then, but I don't think Jean Gomeshi would have even listened, even if it had been. He had a particular sexual fetish. The people who get involved in that sexual fetish are not mentally stable, right? From what I have been able to be determined, there's actual legal contracts that some people in this community force each other to sign to protect themselves from this. What the real fallout on this one was, and something to keep in mind here, is that for every Jean Gomeshi, there's maybe 100 to 1,000 guys that don't have the legal resources to fight something like this. And even if you do clear it up in court, the court of public opinion still might not pardon you. In fact, in this particular case, and this is why I brought this particular case up, Justin Trudeau used this particular case to platform a law which makes false accusations even easier to do in Canada than it was before. He changed the rules around discovery, even though Jean Gomeshi was innocent. That's the type of situation that you're dealing with here. That's the reason why I brought this up here. Even if you're innocent, even if you prove yourself innocent, you still might not be innocent in the eyes of the public, right? He didn't do it. He's innocent. It doesn't matter, though, because the court of public opinion thinks that he did, and I'm still having to correct people to this day that he did. Now, keep in mind, Jean Gomeshi was a useful target. He was a swarmy little male feminist who sucked up to women and had a really bizarre sexual fetish which caught up to him. And
it literally bit him in the ass. I mean, it wasn't as bad as it could be, like, 4 or 5 Winnipeg mosquitoes that can carry off a little kid, but still. Well, you know what, folks? Especially with the women, like it or not, this is how the court system is. If you got a good enough lawyer and they can find a way to drive that wedge and pound it through, not like how Lucy Dugaturi wanted to get pounded. God, stupid cunt, but whatever. If you have a good enough lawyer, at the very least you can have the charges dropped. Not necessarily acquitted, but you can have the charges dropped. There will be that air of Casca F around you, but his lawyer did what he needed to do, which is to provide reasonable doubt, and he won. Like it or not, that's just how the law system is. But it's perfectly fine for women to do it. It's not so fine for men to do it. Again, a double standard of current modern society.
Exactly. The example here is that, yeah, even if you're innocent, and this is something that I keep saying, a lot of people are not going to check. A lot of people are going to be too lazy, too indoctrinated, too stupid, too willfully ignorant to actually fact check. It sucks to be told this, but in this particular situation, he was tried in the court of public opinion. He wasn't tried in a court. He was also tried in the court of law. Had he been a little bit poorer, it would have been even worse for him. But I mean, his career has never really recovered. Now, let's go on to case study number 2. Now, this guy is going to trigger a lot of emotional responses. First of all, I'm going to just say this flat out.
That's him on the screen right now?
Yeah, that's Andrew Tate.
Okay, yep. Okay.
Yep. If you look at Tate and you start spurging out and you go, well, Tate this, Tate that, Tate something else, or it's like, it's like, yeah, the problem is you. The problem isn't Tate. Now, do I completely agree with everything that Tate says and does? Absolutely not. I mean, he said something pretty horrendously stupid 2 days ago saying that the men's rights movement is dead. It's not dead. He's also said stuff about MGTOW, which is also not true. MGTOW is still a thing. Andrew Tate has gone on the record as saying that MGTOW is no longer a thing. It is. That being said, though, Tate, from all appearances, and I'm going to say from all appearances, but I mean, I have to say it, the appearances appear to be pretty real to me, has been a target of basically a targeted prosecution and a targeted attempt to get him either silenced or dead or in jail. Somebody over the next year or two is probably going to make probably an attempt to take this guy's life. And yeah, oh well, he's a human trafficker, blah 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 blah. It's like, sorry, do you actually have proof of that? Like, do you actually have proof that he was doing that, or are you just going with what the courts said he was doing? I'm going to throw something out, and this is I've talked about John Gamashi. This applies to Andrew Tate times about 100, right? Because we cover this on the Red Pill Nation frequently. The press lies about feminism. They lie about the corruption. They lie about Elon Musk and what he's doing. They lied about the vaccines. They lie about stuff. And again, we will be covering this on Red Pill Nation Hangout tomorrow. They lie about how movies are going to do. They lie and they lie and they've lied about everything. But somehow, and I'm going to throw this out to everybody here, somehow when it comes to Andrew Tate, and even people who know better fall into this trap, somehow when it comes to Andrew Tate, oh no, the media is being completely truthful on this. So yeah, let me just bring everybody up to speed as to what has happened with Tate over the past few years. All right. First, the first case, the one that first got him into trouble. There was a woman who, it wasn't even Andrew Tate. She was more interested in Tristan Tate. And she went back to the mansion in Romania with Andrew and Tristan. And she also had a boyfriend. And she texted her boyfriend while at the mansion and said that she was with Tristan Tate and took photos. Now, the boyfriend must have gotten really jealous or whatever, because he actually called the U.S. Embassy, and the U.S. Embassy called the police, and the police came down and tried to charge Andrew Tate with unlawful confinement. The case failed to stick, however, because the girl was seen leaving the following morning, and she was also seen going to the front gate with cash to pay for a pizza delivery to the mansion, unescorted. So yeah, that one fell apart almost immediately. Now, the second one, and this is Andrew Tate's fault. He didn't do his due diligence, because if he had done his due diligence with these two women, he would have noticed that they're one of those two women that tried this the second time around. There were 7 false accusations with one of these two girls. I think it was the American one. What ended up happening is that these two women moved in, and Andrew Tate, whether you like it or not, whether you think that he's an attractive person or not, is irrelevant. I mean, he's got money, he's well built, he's maybe not necessarily the most attractive guy out there, but I mean, like, yeah, like he would qualify at absolute worst as a top 10 percenter. I would probably go so far as to say he's probably a 1 percenter, but I don't know because I don't necessarily adhere to that type of philosophy. But these women were staying at Tate's property, and they were free to come and go as they chose. I don't know the specifics as to what happened, but at some point, these two women got together and decided that they were going to accuse Andrew Tate of unlawful confinement and human trafficking. They went to the Romanian police, and the Romanian police responded almost immediately. Now, here's where the thing starts to fall apart, right? This is the reason why this particular case got thrown out. First of all, the woman who took the initial report didn't translate from English to Romanian very well. The prosecuting attorney, even though the report was not particularly well made, decided, for reasons known only to him or her, decided to proceed with an investigation with really not particularly solid evidence. Also, and this is something that a lot of people don't like hearing, and I don't really particularly care if you got to stick up your ass about Tate, the two girls, as soon as all of the legal fallout happened, as soon as humanly possible, they got on a plane and left Romania. But you think after being, quote unquote, afraid for their lives and fearful that Tate was going to hurt them, instead of going back to their families, the two of them collectively decided to go and suddenly they had the money to go and spend a week at the French Riviera.
Sluts!
Yeah.
Cocksucking sluts.
They suddenly had the money to spend a week at the French Riviera, and they were so clueless that they actually posted this stuff up at their Instagram feed. Also, at their Instagram feed, and I don't really care if you like this. Feel free to fact check anything that I'm telling you on this, by the way. These two girls also posted up stuff while they were staying at Tate's mansion, which clearly shows that they were not being held against their will. Now, when Tate got himself a decent lawyer, the first thing they did is, once again, as in the case of girl number 1, they released footage which clearly shows these two girls leaving the mansion unescorted with money and coming back to the mansion. We also see them doing Instagram and TikTok videos inside the mansion, unsupervised, because Tate was not there when they did them. Now, when this got found out, they immediately privated and removed the photos, but it didn't matter. And then they held Tate for an inordinate amount of time. Now, this one has a political element to it. Someone within the British government really has it out for the Tates. Now, you got to understand something also about Andrew Tate versus, say, Rollo Tomasi or Fresh and Fit or whatever, or even Aaron Clary. Tate, first of all, Tate has got a bigger following than Aaron Claire. Although, strangely enough, if you listen to Tate and you listen to Claire, they generally talk about the same thing. The big difference between Tate and Clary is that Clary lives in a house that he owns outside of Las Vegas, and he drives a truck around, and that's it. He doesn't have a mansion. Tate, on the other hand, they have an extremely large overlap between the two of them. Tate also talks about Clary talks a lot about getting out of the system. Tate also talks a lot about getting out of the system. The difference between Tate and Clary is that Andrew Tate drives Bugatti around and lives in a mansion and is generally surrounded by hot chicks. Very similar to a guy by the name of Milo Yiannopoulos from a few years ago, except Milo Yiannopoulos was gay. But Milo Yiannopoulos liked to drive around in an Asta Villa and wore really expensive suits. He liked to live the high life. This is the same sort of thing that Tate does.
I'm sorry, man. I was just going to say, all that Tate is doing, he's painting a fucking target on his goddamn back, and he's expecting to get away with it.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, well, sort of. Yes, no. He's on the record as saying that they were going to either throw him in jail or they were going to kill him at some point. So, yeah, I fully expect at some point that somebody's going to try to kill Tate or his brother or both of them. The issue here is that, when they realized that those cases were falling apart, the British government made an effort to try to extradite him back to Britain. And this is the part that when we start talking about false accusations, because I was talking about, I don't know whether you were on that show or not, where I was talking about Harvey Weinstein and what happened with him, right? I suspect that if he got you weren't on that show. Harvey Weinstein, and by the way, I think Harvey Weinstein is guilty as fuck, but Gloria Allred used the Weinstein prosecution. She represented the people who were filing charges against Harvey Weinstein. And instead of going for taking the time to do a proper prosecution against Weinstein, they decided to go for the optics of an easy prosecution and easy sentencing, and didn't stop to consider that everything that they were doing was going to be appealable. And the reason why Gloria Allred did that is because she was thinking more in terms of going after Weinstein for his money. The whole situation here is that the British, there is clearly a faction inside the British government that they seem to think that throwing Tate behind bars is going to somehow silence the minister. In fact, I'm telling you right now, it's not going to do the thing that you think it's going to do. But that's not the way these people are thinking. They want Tate behind bars because, he represents, he is a very loud personality. He's got a somewhat abrasive, aggressive style when he talks. And a lot of young men listen to him for very good reason. So they have to lie about him. They have to say a whole bunch of things about him. They're basically trying to do everything humanly possible to throw him behind bars. And the whole situation with him is that, the cases keep falling apart. And the reason why the cases keep falling apart, and from all intents and purposes, this is what it looked like to me. Somebody went approach these two girls, and this one girl had 7, let me read that again, 7 false accusation, rape charge, had filed 7 charges against guys in the past, one of whom committed suicide. They, this looks very much like it was, again, also Tate was, and I mean, there's no other way to say it. He was a bit of a digital pimp. He ran a studio where women would go and use his studio and do OnlyFans or whatever, and then Tate would get a cut of it. Right? They passed that off as human trafficking. Also, again, Tate is not necessarily the smartest guy. Again, he doesn't pick women very well. This one woman wanted to do a sex scene, wanted to do a fantasy with Tate, which Tate involved. Unfortunately, this particular scene involved him slapping her around, and that video got leaked. The woman in that case had to step forward and go, no, that was just a role play. But unless you bother to ask or you know exactly where to look, you wouldn't know that. The lesson here with Tate is that, I mean, and this is something, because you're gonna have enough, like, even if they do succeed in either killing or throwing Tate in jail or incapacitating Andrew Tate in some way, is that there's gonna be another person like Tate that's gonna come along, right? Tate represents what can happen. Again, like I was saying with John Gamishi, Tate represents something that the state and certain powers and authorities don't want men to find out. They don't know how to deal with it. And unfortunately, again, and this is something that that is going to come up quite frequently here. Like, there is a slow boil happening with men, at least in the West anyway, and it's gonna go critical. That's part of the reason, for instance, why they're so desperate to try and start a war with Russia, because they need to channel that male energy into something external, because if it's left unchecked internally, it's gonna turn the country upside down. Tate is probably one of the few guys out there that's actually addressing this properly, and they just can't have that. Now, does it sound like I'm a Tate fanboy? No, I don't. No, I'm not. Right? But again, familiarity with what Tate is. I'm in the manosphere. He's in the manosphere. Familiarity of what happened to Tate does not make me a Tate fan any more than knowing what happened to Germany in the 30s makes me a Nazi. And it's not my problem if seeing Tate triggers you. If he triggers you, I would strongly suggest that you go and listen to some of the things that he's been saying. But this is an example of a state spawn. I mean, I'm going to just say it. I think somebody paid off these two girls to file this charge, and basically they tried everything humanly possible, because they kept Tate in jail for 6 months over this. And at one point, the excuse for keeping him in jail was so flimsy that it was absolutely unbelievable. But I mean, again, this isn't a fanboy Tate thing, but I'm just saying, like, the case study on Tate is an example of a kangaroo court. If he had been extradited to Britain, he would be facing a kangaroo court, right? Because, enough people believe the narrative about Tate that they won't check. And when you do start to check, you start to notice that the evidence falls apart very quickly. And I'm going to turn it over to Rusin before we talk about the last one.
Well, much like yourself, up until I'm processing to what I remember with you talking about Andrew Tate way back in the day with the early days or early years of our podcast, and I had no idea who they were talking about. But now that with time and exposure and experience and reflection and typically a lot of things that most modern women don't do, I'm well aware of who Andrew Tate is. And I said it before and I'll say it again. To me, he is the biggest immediate threat on what young men, all men, but more especially young men need to do to, in one sense or another, they need to fulfill their biological needs to feel like they are a man. Which really goes against the whole drive of feminism, in which the women are told, yeah, you can have it all. You can have the job, you can have the career, you can have the family. But what they don't tell them is that you have to do it in reverse. What a guy can do, you can do. No, you can't, sweetie. Your brain is wired differently. And if you want to take it from the perspective of what a guy can do, I can do. Yeah, you absolutely can. But as it is said many, many, many times in different forms, what are you going to have? You're going to have box wine and cat litter, because the only one that's going to be playing with any pussy is going to be you because you've got a cat. Yeah, I went there. Don't care. And here's another thing as well, too, and you might want to look into this. There's studies that are starting to indicate, or they have indicated, is that women that have been on birth control are the ones that are much more likely to have the need for head meds. So there's the pharmaceutical industry just waiting to pick up 10, 20, 30 years later with the one who's been on birth control. So the whole thing is messed up. And I'm going to go back to Tate at this point, because to me, it's an indication that the system is wrong. The system is inherently fixed. And with him being as outspoken as he is, and I guess to some degree, I'm more Tate-ish. If I'm given the chance to actually speak my mind and to say what needs to be said, I'm going to, and you know me, I'm going to address the elephant in the room. I'm going to call it out. And it's like, well, hey, just so you know, there's that 14-foot elephant over there. No one's talking about it, so I might as well, and see what happens. And to me, in many regards, that's what Tate is that he brings about entropy in the sense of things aren't working out quite the way that we are thinking it's supposed to work out. And watching his podcast with Pearl or whomever else, he's pretty damn quick to put women in their place. They may not like it, especially feminists, but they're not going to. They will put up or flare up their emotions, but he doesn't deal with any of that shit with them. And I think that, actually, now that I think about it, that's probably one of the biggest fears that the deep state has, is at the end of the day, pretty much every woman that's out there wants a man who's going to be more successful. He's going to have more than she doesn't. So she will have to submit to him. But I know that is an entirely different freaking topic. I'm not one to talk, but with what I've come to comprehend, not understand, comprehend, as to how women are, and I'm dealing with right now that former work wife of mine. I'm back in communication with her. I'm in the process of destroying her, and when I'm done, I'm fucking done. I will have nothing more to do with her. But I'm gonna have to go on the attack. I have to be a man. I have to put her in her place. And then when it's all said and done, I'm walking away kind of going, bitch, you're on your own. And it's not that I'm watching a lot of Tate's material, but at the end of the day, these pro-feminist, man-hating twats will want, as much as they will not admit, will want a guy like Andrew Tate in their life to put them in their place and to keep them in their place. Then it would be some beta male soy boy who's happy to get what he's going to get. And Tate even calls out that kind of bullshit as well, too. So, yeah. You want to talk about the alpha of male accusations? Again, I don't particularly care for Tate, but what he's saying isn't wrong. And the entitled women that he goes up against, more often than not, they learn to, in his presence at least anyway, to shut the fuck up, listen. You're screaming you want a better man. There's one guy that's in front of you telling you to not necessarily, get down on your knees, but just, I know your place. You know your place. I'm calling you out for it. And if you don't like it, well, too fucking bad. Because you heard it here first. Because no one else, no other men in your life have basically said to you, no. And I think that's what a lot of the problems I think in society are. So women have this terribly uppity attitude, and there aren't enough guys to basically tell her, no, bitch, you're wrong because of. And I could easily channel, Bill Burr. And the female that I have problems with. Is that not enough guys have told her, no, this is what the situation is. Which I know is what she wants. But, too late with me. Anyway. Tate is dangerous in, ultimately, the message that he can and should be telling boys that are turning into men, and will also should be telling men, as old as I am or you are or whoever else, this is what you need to do as a man to be a man. And again, this again goes against the toxic masculinity narrative that this is really what this is all circling the wagons around to try to keep that contained. So I don't have any more to say.
Anyway, yeah, I'm not going to get into a big, huge discussion again, right? But I will say this again, right? If Andrew Tate triggers you, and what we've been telling you triggers you, you are free to go and fact check everything I have said. I will also, and when you go and you do a Google search on Tate, you will notice they will talk about him. They will not talk, and they do this with the manosphere in general. They will talk about him and not about the things he discusses. They will talk about what he did. They want to make it about him. They don't want to make it about the actual issue. But that is it for this particular one. Let's go on to topic case study number 3. And this is an example of a Actually, no, I'll go with this photo here. This is an example of the impact that the manosphere is actually having. I'm also
Ugh.
going to point out
Yeah.
something here about this particular case because this one has some very eerie similarities to Amber Heard in a lot of ways. Blake Lively engaged in a full court press campaign. Oh, by the way, Justin Baldoni is in all likelihood, in my opinion, a male feminist. Again, if you look at Justin Baldoni, I don't see any. There's a photo of him on the up on the up right now. If I look at Justin Baldoni, I do not see, unlike say Andrew Tate, I do not see a guy who is hyper aggressive and vicious and has a short temper. Justin Baldoni seems to have, for lack of a better term, a kind face. He appears to be the decent, nice guy. He also probably played the part. He played the part of the feminist ally because he thought that was going to help him, and to a certain degree, it did. It Ends with Us is a book written likely by a feminist woman about an issue that does affect women, which is domestic abuse. And when I talk about domestic abuse, I'm actually talking about real, legitimate domestic abuse, not like the false accusations of domestic abuse, which also, by the way, happen. And it is not 3%. You can fuck that right off the bat. But what happened here with Blake Lively is that her and her husband, Ryan Reynolds, attempted to take this film franchise away from Baldoni. And Blake Lively basically pulled a page out of the Amber Heard playbook because Me Too, and because people in Hollywood live in a bubble and are not necessarily aware of what's going on in the big picture. They went after Baldoni. And they actually, and I swear to God, this actually happened. Justin Baldoni was forced during the after party to go and sit in the basement of the theater with his family to celebrate the release of the movie after they'd seen the movie, because either Blake Lively or Ryan Reynolds or both of them went to the studio and demanded that they would not appear in the press briefings if Baldoni was actually there. And the studio went along with it. Again, they didn't check. Now, what ended up happening, and this is what ended up happening, is that at some point, either somebody who was in the know went to Baldoni and said, like, no, like, you cannot be the nice guy with this. They are trying to destroy your career. You need to fight back. Now, I'm going to say this on the off chance that Justin Baldoni ever looks at this. I'm going to make something really clear to you, Justin. Whether you want to admit it or not, the only reason why you still have a career right now is because the lawyer you had either went to lawyers that have dealt with this particular type of situation, which, by the way, are lawyers that generally deal with manosphere-related issues, or the person who told you who gave you suggestions of what to do, he is connected. He or she is connected to the manosphere. Whether you want to admit it or not, and either directly or indirectly, you are still in the game with the manosphere. The whole issue here, though, is that both Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively thought that they would be able to pull an Amber Heard 2.0. The only problem is that there's too much information about what Amber Heard has done, and there's a lot of people who know a lot more about the manosphere and know a lot more about false accusations because of what Amber Heard did, and it didn't work. Now, there are certainly members of the media that aren't checking that won't check. The Hollywood Reporter being one of the ones that isn't bothering to check. If you go into the supermarket and you look at the line, there's a couple of gossip rags that are just absolutely trashing Justin Baldoni right now. The whole issue here is that, and this is why I picked this one as a case study, right? One of the things that happened was that there was a woman, and we all know her because we've talked about her before. Marissa knows who I'm talking about, Candace Owens, who has 2 sons and knows what's going on, started looking a little bit further into Blake Lively and into Ryan Reynolds. And all of a sudden, their squeaky clean image doesn't hold up, and their story doesn't hold up. Why does their story not hold up? Because Justin Baldoni did what I said you need to do at the start of the story. Lawyer the fuck up. Get yourself a good lawyer, a lawyer that knows how to fight in the court of public opinion, not just in the court of law. And they know, because of what happened when Amber Heard went down in flames, that they know the moves that they have to do to Blake Lively now to put them on the defensive. Now, unlike what happened with Johnny Depp, Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds are both in danger of having their careers go off the rails. And the case study here is, though, and I'm going to speak this out to Justin Baldoni. Yeah, I bet you were shocked when this happened, weren't you? I bet you sat down somewhere and you looked at the circumstances, and you looked specifically that one incident where she claims that you walked in on her while she was breastfeeding, and fortunately you had made the good sense to save that text. I'm betting, though, Justin, that when you were walking to her trailer, I'm betting you there were a couple of friends of hers nearby to confirm that you just walked in like that, and that you're like looking at that and going, how could I be so stupid? And it's like, no, you weren't stupid, right? But whether you like it or not, there are people out there in the manosphere who did know what to do. The lawyer that you got to represent you probably got his information about how to deal with this situation from a lawyer that has dealt with manosphere issues. Or, yeah, one way or the other, it was directly or indirectly. But this is a prime example of, again, right, and this is what's happened in all 3 cases. They've attempted to try these guys in the court of public opinion. I will finish this off, and then I will turn it over to Marissa, and we will wrap this up. I'm going to point out to you that for every Justin Baldoni, for every Andrew Tate, for every Jean Ghomeshi, there's hundreds of men that don't have the mental, financial, or emotional resources to get in a long-term slug-it-out battle with a toxic woman or a toxic couple. Ryan Reynolds is a white knight in this situation. And again, the case study here with Justin Baldoni is that Justin Baldoni had, because of what happened, and then indirectly, because not just because what happened with John Ghomeshi and Tate, it's like, he had the good sense to lawyer up with a lawyer that knew who to talk to about how to deal with this stuff right out the gate. That information to deal with a situation like this is available right out of the gate now, thanks to the manosphere, whether anybody who's watching this likes to hear that or not. And Justin Baldoni, unlike Jean Ghomeshi, well, Tate will live to fight another day. Justin Baldoni, unfortunately, though, And he's probably finding this out the hard way. There's people that will never talk to him again. There's people that will never work with him again. There are people that will never check whether he actually did it or not, even though he's put out a website where he clearly makes his case. Because women are wonderful, and because Blake Lively is so pretty. And because Blake Lively is so pretty, she couldn't possibly want to do this. But again, when we talk about pretty girls, there's Nahir Galarza. Nahir Galarza actually, at least in my opinion, has a better body than Blake Lively. And Blake Lively has got a rockin' body. Yeah. The progression here, the lawyering up right away, the knowing how to fight back right away, that is something that the manosphere has done. This is something that men everywhere need to start thinking about, because false accusations are no laughing matter. But again, now in most situations, this is what I was talking about though. Blake Lively isn't tapping out. Candace Owens strongly suggested that she tapped out, but she didn't tap out, right? And because she's not tapping out, this is going to drag on because ego, right? Most women do not take this that far, but unfortunately, we're not talking about two normal people here. We're talking about an A-lister and a top flight director. And, I'm sure there was a time, and I'm pretty sure there was a time with you, Justin, where you looked back on that scenario and you realized how you had been set up, and you did face Paul. Don't fucking tell me that didn't happen, because I have yet to meet a guy who's been through this situation that hasn't. Lesson learned. If I were you, though, what I would do is I would publish a book and I would give suggestions to what to look for. Because, yeah, there's hundreds of women out there like Blake Lively, like Nahir Galarza, like Lucy DeCouture. The society is generating them by the thousands. And you wonder why guys don't want to get married anymore. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Steve Rierson, and we are going to take this episode out.
I actually did take the time to learn more about what was going on here. And to me, it seems to be a case of Blake Lively thought she was a lot more than she wasn't. Baldoni had bought the rights to the movie. Lively fit in with adjustments, shall we say, to the script. But then she, hearsay indicates, is that she was more interested in tailoring it to what she wanted, to what would be more true to the story and the story rights as to what Baldoni bought. Now, Lively, being married to Ryan Reynolds, feels that she is at the apex of where she is currently in. That kind of rationalization, that thought process, whatever you want to call it, wouldn't be wrong. And that pretty much is where this whole thing is gone. Is that the woman has overstepped her boundaries. She overstepped her she wouldn't be able to get as far with this whole thing with Baldoni as she would if she wasn't married to Ryan Reynolds. And he right now was he's one of the he really can't do anything wrong, shall we say. He has the public perception. People love him. He's funny. I'm sure there are a lot of red flags that if Ryan Reynolds was a woman, as a celebrity, people would be running away from, but because he's male and he's, shall we say, mostly harmless, he is the hidden power behind her. It seems to be kind of a situation of behind every great man is a very supportive, wonderful woman, and it's reversed in this regard. So my opinion is that she's relying on Ryan to for her to do whatever she wants. Now, it could very well be a case that Reynolds probably realizes that he's screwed no matter what he does. If he doesn't support her, then the whole thing falls apart. But maybe the two of them are so egocentric and driven that they're happy to run over people like Baldoni and whoever else for them to stay at the top. But if that was the case, then their squeaky clean image is going to be in tatters pretty damn soon. So, I don't know. I really don't know. Like, I'm starting to have I'm asking a lot of internal questions, shall we say, about Reynolds, and if the two of them are on the dating list, we'll leave that alone. But if the two of them are on the dating list, then this kind of fits in with how she's acting at this point. I don't know. I really don't know. I can tell you this much. I'm not going to be watching this movie with Baldoni, and it's not him. It's not Blake Lively. It's just that I don't care for fucking romance movies, whether they're rom-coms or romance dramas or romance thrillers or whatever. That part of me died a long time ago. Having been a very romantic male before we met, that part of me is still there. But I'm keeping that part of me in a coma because I don't want that to come out anymore. It's too harmful. It's too can easily set me back, and I don't have the luxury of time anymore to think about devoting to a bipedal XX piece of ass anymore, and I just don't. So again, with me being in the middle of my red pill rage, I don't have time for fucking women like this. I don't have time for women like that. I don't have time for celebrities to begin with. And it's going to be a tough fight for Baldoni, and in a sense, he has my moral support. I'm not going to support him out. I'm not going to support him on social media. I don't follow him.
Well, I mean, he's a male feminist, and that kind of limits the amount of support that I'm willing to give him.
Yeah, exactly. If I want a male feminist, I'll fucking vote for Trudeau. I don't need to go further than that. And I'm not going to be voting for Trudeau. And, for Baldoni to be going the male feminist route, let's call it for what it is in Hollywood. You have to bend the knee if you want to get anywhere. The types that are the, shall we say, like the more like the Clint Eastwoods, they will be around, but you have to have something special to have not him but people like him afterwards to support you and to put your projects forward. So he's had to play the game. Whether he is genuinely a male feminist or not, I don't know. Not like I mentioned Dave Filoni, but we'll leave that alone. But much like, actually, that's probably the best way to say it, is that outwardly, Hollywood is going to be your negative cesspool den of your corporate HR office, but it's wrapped up in the entertainment industry, and if you want to go anywhere within that field, you have to play their game. Now, what this is going to look like for him later on, I don't know, and to be honest with you, I might remember his name, No, I will remember his name when I see something on him, I don't know, in a year from now. And, things could very well change that the rot of Hollywood could very well be exposed. And if it is, and if Reynolds and Lively's names are brought up for attending Diddy parties, I'm not going to have any sympathy for them. I'm going to be disappointed, but I'm not going to have any sympathy. So, everything with Baldoni, in my opinion, at this point, is far from over. And time will tell, and maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. I really don't know, but I'm trying to stay above all of the Hollywood shit because politics is bad enough. Politics in Hollywood, that's even worse. So I got nothing more to say.
Okay, so this concludes the show. Yeah, we're just gonna hit. I didn't think we were gonna go 3 hours, but apparently we did. Just letting you know, Rearson, the topics have been finalized for tomorrow. There's a lot to digest here in terms of false accusations. And yeah, I did have to break this down into two parts. The case study, you can see the progression from Gomeshi to Tate to Baldoni, and you're seeing the press and you're seeing feminism have less and less and less of an influence over the situation, which I think is only going to play out in the long run. Because again, right, and without getting into too much of detail, I think the establishment really wants a war somewhere, because there's a lot of pent up male anger and energy, and false accusations are a part of it, whether you want to admit it or not. Now, to the people who are still listening, you need to consider this. There is a tidal wave coming. And if you are not willing to address the issues that young men and men in general are dealing with, that wave is going to smash you into the ground and is going to turn society upside down. We need to fix this. I can do what I can for myself individually, but there's too many men out there who are in really bad straits. And for every Gomeshi and Tate and Baldoni, there's hundreds of guys that don't have the resources to deal with this situation and are sitting in jail or sitting in limbo or in hiding because of it. And with that, I am going to wish all of you a good night. And that is the end of the show. Just remember, Patreon as the Red Pill, as the Rookie 5, if you want to support me. I will be back tomorrow to do the Red Pill Nation Hangout. That one right there. But tonight, it is just the Rookie 5. And yes, for the record, I will not necessarily have Rearson on every single show for the Rookie 5. But thank you very much for listening tonight. And that is, yeah, that's the end.